about how to personalize the career plan document for your students. And this is actually part 2 of the webinar, and it's called the Employability Skills Profile. If by chance you missed the GPS career plan, it is archived, and I'll also be very happy to send you the material, so that's no problem. This afternoon, I feel like I'm speaking to 2 different audiences. I know some of you are very concerned about the CDOS credential, which is very good, and then I have many people on that are looking strictly at the work-based learning for the high school students and the CTE students. What I have to say today is good for both groups, and as before, I always take a very creative type of approach to a topic. So a lot of what I'll say you can adopt, or you could say, no, that doesn't fit our school and we don't want to do it. So whatever works for you, I recommend that you give that a try. We will go and talk about today. We're going to discuss some very creative activities on how to generate data for the employability skill profile. I'm going to show you how to make a connection between the employability skill profile and the work-based learning training plan. We'll identify the indicators to determine if the student trainee is ready to work, and then we'll connect this document to the student's resume and communications for employment or post-secondary actions. And I hope that by the end of the hour that you'll feel confident that you understand the use of the employability skills profile as well as the career plan as what we've talked about before. Well, we will stop in a few minutes, so if you have some questions about the what, we'll have a chance to go over that. So here we are. We have validation of achievement is really the end goal of the GPS career plan and the employability skills profile. The GPS career plan is where am I going, and the employability skills profile, I look at it as am I ready to work. During the webinar, I'm going to be answering questions such as, or making sure I answer questions of, is there a need for an employability skills profile? Who needs it? Who wants it? Who completes it? When is it completed? Is it graded or reviewed? What form does it come in? Does the student take the both documents upon exiting the high school? So all of those questions I believe we will address now. And first, we'll take a look then at the purpose of the employability skills profile. We're talking about a document that is going to validate your students' readiness for the workforce. It will validate their achievements. It will validate the growth that they have had over the years with you. And hopefully this validation, the process, will prepare your students for the job interview, for creating the resume, for post-secondary education activity, and for an e-portfolio for the student to take with him or her as they move on in life. As I stated before from the last webinar, it's really important that the student needs to feel it's a valuable document. It's not just a document that is for the school to be put into the student's file. It's something the student does not want to leave the building unless they have it with them because they see the value to it. So keeping that in mind, we need to make sure that this document or documents of many pages has value to the student. The employability skills profile basically focuses on the knowledge the student has learned, the skills for a job, and the behavior for the job and the school classroom. It's really answering the question, am I ready to work? What have I learned? What have I learned from my work experience? Have I demonstrated appropriate school and workplace behavior? This is what workforce readiness is. It's almost your student's brand of who they are. And actually the student is a representation of your school program, so it's the brand of your school. Here I'd like to bring up a concept about ready to work. What does that mean? I could define it for you. We could have the state define workforce ready. You could have your school define it. But actually, the right people to define what is workforce ready would be your employers, because those are the people, the end people, that are going to want to see a credential or ask about, are you ready to work in my business? So what are employers looking for? Well, has the student identified his interests and skills? Have they identified the career choices? Have they created a roadmap, a GPS roadmap? Is the student prepared to identify employers and match his interests and skills to those employers' needs? And does the student have the knowledge, skills, and documents needed for employment? Now, what I want you to think about is there's nothing stopping you and your school from creating your own workforce readiness certificate for your student. You don't have to wait for something to come down from the U.S. federal government and say, this is what your student should do. You don't have to wait for the state to say something. You could actually go ahead and create your own certificate. The certificate will have value if the employers are creating it with you. So this is really a very important part of the employability skills profile. You want your employers to be looking at and helping you decide what this profile should have, because it's the employer that should be asking the student during a job interview, I want to see your resume, but I also want to see your employability skill profile. I want to see if you have your workforce readiness certificate. Okay? You can do this if you have an advisory board. Bring those employers together, sit down, talk about this topic, because these are the traits, skills, knowledge, and so forth that you want to analyze and to validate with your students. So don't wait for someone else to do it. Many of you are in large cities like New York and Buffalo and Syracuse and so forth. You don't need necessarily to wait for someone to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. You can create one for your own school with your own employers. Keep that in your mind, and maybe that's something that we should talk about in a little bit. Another point, too, that I just wanted to bring up to you is that many times in industry we use in education we use two different terms, career awareness and career development. Career awareness really matches the GPS career plan. And these are the items I've mentioned before. The student knows what his interests are, what are the career choices, where am I going, am I prepared to identify employers that match my interests and skills. And along with that, 54 hours of work-based learning usually is given. So it's very similar to the CDOS credential in that the student has the awareness and has a plan. Career development is a little bit more. It includes the knowledge and everything else that we talked on the career awareness side, but it also includes specific job skills, such as working as a cashier, working in culinary, working in technology, that students have had the opportunity to practice and validate that they have these skills. And that the student also is walking away with a lot of documents about how do I apply, who will hire me, how do I get this job. And usually career development comes with at least a minimum of 150 plus hours of work-based learning experience. Now, I know with the new CDOS credential, everyone is very concerned that they'll be able to get the 54 hours for their students. I think you will. If you just working with your employers, find your places, you'll have 54 hours, but I hope you would even work a little bit harder and try to get more hours for your students. 54 hours of work-based learning really doesn't make that student workforce ready. They are workforce aware, but they really need to have an opportunity that lasts longer, such as 150 plus hours. So don't be afraid to use those summer hours and to have some supervised work experience at that time. And use a variety of things for the students, variety of activities for the students to get those hours. The State Education Department has shared with everybody when they announced the CDOS commencement credential a suggested form for the employability profile. And I should also mention here at this time too, there's actually, if you mention the words employability profile, employability skills profile, depending upon what side, where you are in education, it could mean two different things. One, we're hearing about it now with the CDOS credential, and that it's talking about, is this student ready to work? Before, and it still does, it exists in the state-approved program of study for career and technical education. All of the career and technical education classes have their own employability skills profile. Looks very similar to this, has an element for work experience for the employer to comment. So the documents are similar, but maybe sometimes a little bit different. So if someone starts to say, well, we do this, we have this, make sure you know what you're talking about it and who's doing what so that you can work together. There's one other document, too, that looks very similar to that, to this particular document, and that is the training plan that if your student goes into a work-based learning training site with a supervised certified coordinator, the employer would be setting up a training plan in which it would include the tasks, the skills, and safety training and so forth. Very similar to this, and I'm going to be sharing that training plan with you today, so you'll get an idea of this. The form that the state ed has suggested is a 3-page form, and it looks like, from what I can tell, it's to be filled out or completed by a combination of the teacher, the employer, the student. All three individuals have some type of feedback on this particular form. It identifies the type of work-based learning experience, the worksite name, the description of the experience. It has categories, a scale to judge the student's progress, unsatisfactory, needs improvement, meets expectations, exceeds expectations, and then it has a variety of performance skills that we are asked to evaluate if the student has reached those goals. And certainly we would want them to meet expectations and even exceed expectations. So we have topics such as attendance, punctuality, workplace appearance, takes initiative, quality of work, knowledge of workplace, response to supervision, communication skills. We have our numbering scale, and then we have a section for comments, student work readiness skills. Now, this is a great form with lots of information that we need to input into, but not too much space for us to really add to it. So as I did with the career plan in the last presentation, I have expanded upon the career plan before from the state, as well as I'm going to show you an expanded employability skills profile that you could use. Because we need more space to write, certainly. We probably need more opportunities to, get rid of that, more opportunities to evaluate, and we need to put down examples of how did the student demonstrate punctuality, how did the student demonstrate quality of work. The student would need to be able to talk about these experiences, because all of these items on this page and the second, here's the second one, all of the items on these 2 pages probably could lead to job interview questions. So the students would need to be able to answer the question and bring up an example of what they have done either in the classroom or at the work site that they have validated this particular performance skills. For example, the first one says solves problems and makes decisions, identifies the nature of the problem, evaluates various ways of solving the problem, and selects the best alternative. Well, I would hope that if we're filling this in, that we're going to talk about what is the problem specifically, how did they solve it, how did they go about doing that, and what scale were they able to do that. And maybe there was more than one problem-solving experience that should be there also. So now the student can talk about that during the job interview, because it's not uncommon for an employer to say, well, tell me about how a problem you solved at your work site. The third page of the state-suggested form is, I think, a great ending. It's a nice report card of you being able to report the type of activities that went on, and if the student received the appropriate number of hours for the CDOS credential. So you see we have here career and technical education coursework, when did they take it, what year, comments about it, number of hours. This is a very simple chart to fill in, but if you were here for the career plan, you know that my career plan chart had a lot more in there as far as, okay, what did I learn in that course? What did I master? What can I do? Same with work-based learning experiences, a chart to fill in, but again, in the career plan, there was a place to put a lot of this information. And then if the student has passed an industry-based assessment, the industry-based assessment are assessments that have been, in many cases, created by industry or a professional organization that benchmark exactly what a student should know in order to be considered ready to work in a particular field. There are industry assessments for culinary, for automotive, for healthcare. I believe the state has approved 13 different industry assessments as of this time, and that I'm sure they'll be approving others. So if by possible chance you could get your student to prepare for an assessment and make sure they pass it, this is a great place that you would record it. Now again, this is a 3-page document, and it's supposed to be filled out, go into the student's file, and I would hope the student would say, well, I'll take a copy. I hope more than if the student takes a copy, he or she doesn't fold it up and put it in his pants pocket and leave the school building and not have the feeling of, what am I going to do with this, and who cares about this information? I'm finished with that school, but I'm going on to something else. We want that student to feel like this is important and that I need to have it. And that's what I hope to share with you in the second part. And so actually, before I go on to just talking a little bit about the passport for Mario, our student that I used last time, let me just pause a second to see if there are any questions about the employability skills profile as far as what I have told you that the state is looking for. So, hold on.
Yes. So you have a few questions at this time. The first one is, does the student training plan document identify the externship experience?
Does the student training plan document identify the externship? Yes. The work-based learning training plan would be the externship. There are spots on this form that I just showed you before. Let me go back. And maybe I'm confused or not sure exactly how to answer identify. Identify as far as who, where, what, and when. That would be on the employability profile or some other document that I'll share with you. You want to see if I answered that question correctly?
All right. Your next question, Sue, is when you say that some of these skills can be filled in from the classroom experiences, do you mean core classes or more like CTE classes?
I'm actually going to show everybody that these experiences and information and activities can be filled in from any class. What I recommend with your school, with your department, is you need to sit down and say, okay, here's the document that we want to use. All of us as a team should contribute to the document so that it's a team effort. So some of the activities I'm going to show you in a few minutes that an English teacher could do, a social studies teacher could do, a math teacher could do, as well as any of the CTE teachers could also do.
Okay. Your your next question is, it is my understanding that students need to complete 216 hours for CTE credential any way the district elects. For example, 216 hours of CTE courses, internships, shadowing, etc. Is this correct?
Yes, you have a choice of 216 hours of all of those hours being work-based learning, or you can break the 216 up into 162 CTE course work hours, and these would be courses taught by CTE teachers, and then 54 hours would be work experience hours. That would be job shadowing, if you want to use some of the state-approved programs such as general work experience, career exploration, so forth. Yes, the work experience should be with an employer. It should be outside of the building. Now, I know that may be difficult in some cases, so I'm not the end person to say this is the way it has to be, but I just would like to recommend that to do the best you can to get those hours outside of the building with a real employer. Personally, if I was running a program like this, I would make sure that my seniors, as a juniors, I would get them non-paid hours, whether they be in the school building or outside with an employer. But as a senior, I would get them a lot more hours with an employer that will pay them right then and there as a part-time employee, with the intent that that employer is training that student to go on full-time after exiting school, and hopefully with benefits. You arrange that with employers by having them part of your advisory board. You need for them to sit around and to understand what the CDOS credential is and what you're trying to do. And basically what you're trying to do is make a young person an asset for that employer, so that person will be productive.
Okay.
Do we have another question?
We do. Can we change the performance skills to be more specific for skills related to my pathway?
I think so. I think we just have a recommended document from the state. You want to make sure that you can have some specific skills, but make sure you have some general skills also in case your student decides to change to another career pathway, that he or she has validated those general skills.
Okay. Your next question is, should I encourage my district to have all employability profiles reviewed by the work-based learning coordinator?
That's a good question. I think if you're working as a team, I think the team should look at the employability skills profile. I would have more than one teacher sign off on it, and certainly the work-based learning coordinator or the person who is in charge of handling the work-based learning section, should be part of the team. So I lean towards making this more of a team effort that includes both classroom and work-based learning, rather than just saying, okay, work-based learning coordinator, you have to do all of it. Because that coordinator doesn't really have that access of what's going on in the classroom.
Okay.
All right.
Your next question is, work-based learning experiences are not just internships, correct?
Yes. When we talk about work-based learning experiences, we now use a very general term of this could be field trips, guest speakers, research reports, things like that. However, when we talk about the hours towards the credential, that 54 hours, we're really talking about internships. So I sort of answered that yes and no in a way. You have to get that student out under the supervision of another adult that is maybe not a teacher. They need to see the real world. Otherwise, we're not doing justice. Just as I said that if I was running a program, my seniors, I would work so hard to make sure I found them paid employment that would lead towards full-time employment after they exit the high school. I know that's difficult, But you know what? You start one step at a time. You find one employer that wants to do that, and then another employer. And once one employer is successful, he tells his friends, and other employers will come and want your students.
Okay, we have a few more questions. The next one is, how exactly can I keep an accurate track of hours worked in coursework hours other than having to go back to attendance records?
Well, certainly with the work experience hours, we use time cards. You can use a weekly time card, a monthly time card. The time card is usually filled out by the student and then signed by the employer, and the student brings that time card back. The hours as far as the classroom, well, you're certainly going to be, if you're using CTE classes, you're going to be listing those classes on your employability skills profile, and if it's a half-year class, it would be 90 hours or 180 hours for a full-year class. So I see they're worried about attendance. Did they actually, were they there 90 days? Probably I would assume your report cards are going to show attendance, and you may be able to use that. I think I'm more concerned about the hours for the work experience to make sure that that's documented.
Okay. Your next question is, how do we get our IEP students to these work sites when they do not have transportation?
It's a struggle. You know, there's no doubt about it, but we need to solve that problem. So you certainly, possibility of school transportation. A lot of schools will provide school buses. There's nothing, I believe, written saying that the student must be working during the school day. The work experience could take place after the school day. I know in many cases with my past work experience programs, I'm out in Smithtown, and many years ago, you know, it was somewhat rural. We don't have any public transportation. So what I would do is I would find out where my student lives, and then I would circle his neighborhood in my car, and I would jot down the stores and companies and whatever in his area, so that that student, after I've made contact with some of those employers, that student could take the regular school bus at 2 o'clock, 2:30, home, and then either be able to walk to the place of business, you know, or ride his bike. And I know there are many more rural areas around the state that businesses are not that predominant, that you don't have them. It's a challenge, but you know, you have to work it out. You have to make one step at a time of how to do it. Don't give up. My answer.
And the next question is the maximum number of CTE coursework hours 162?
I believe so. I believe that was on, right, 162 coursework hours, 54 work-based learning, and this is for the CDOS credential, right? For a regular work-based learning program, there are numbers that start from CEIP for 54 hours, that's the career awareness, and then 150, 300, 600. I actually used to get my students 600 hours of employment during a senior year. Sounds like a lot of numbers, but that works out to only 15 hours a week. So students would take their buses home because transportation was tough, and they would work 3 hours in the afternoon after school. Some of them worked hours on Saturdays and Sundays. You know, it doesn't have to be during the school day, as far as I believe, unless I'm missing some regulation for the CDOS credential.
Okay, and we have one more question. It's referring to the 3 categories you note on page 3, and they were asking that if you could envision some more room for these categories. They appear to be too free to include all the courses and work experience.
Right. Yes. Well, you know, the state, of course, did not need to send us forms with huge amounts of blank space on the form. I'm sure they thought that we will add to what we need to add, whatever space that is necessary to add to these things. And you can change your column headings however you want to do this. If you saw my GPS career plan, I greatly changed the career plan the state had suggested. I think it came out to something like a 10-page document, went from a 3-page to a 10-page document. And you know, you do what you need to do and to make it meaningful. That's the answer. Okay? Can I move on to Mario?
Yes, you may move on to Mario.
Okay. Here's our friend Mario. All right? We want to make sure that Mario, who we know he has a GPS career plan, we now want to make him workforce ready. And I was very pleased after the last presentation of how many people wrote back to me and said, what a great idea. Have the student put a picture on the document that it would make them feel that it's their document and make it more important. So using that concept again, I said, well, I'm going to put Mario back on some document. In this case, I've decided that I want to call it a passport, because this is truly a passport for Mario to move from the school system to the world of work. And we want to make sure that Mario is workforce ready and that he has the right documents to make that move. So I'm going to show you a document here or some slides, and I will be sending you the actual document in digital format, so you will have that. And let me show you how we're going to help Mario make this change. First of all, employers want young people or any employees to have these particular indicators. Many times employers will say, just give me somebody with these behavior traits and I can train them to do the job. So it's important for us from grade 9 through 12 to be emphasizing zest, grit, self-control, optimism, gratitude, social intelligence, curiosity, and commitment. And when I say emphasizing, I mean emphasizing in the classroom. It's too late to start talking about it when they go to the job and you tell Mario, I want you to show zest and be happy and grit that you can do the work while you're there. Mario has to understand what these terms mean and has to be practicing these terms for 4 years. So here comes this team approach. Whatever classes your students are going to be in to earn this passport, the teachers need to be working on this topic. And so how do we do this? Well, here is an Excel spreadsheet that gives an opportunity for Mario and his teachers to do a self-assessment throughout the school year. It's not something that happens at the end of the term. This is a living, learning document for Mario to understand what actually both teachers and employers want. So for example, zest. We want him to understand what zest means. It means to be actively participating, showing enthusiasm, and also invigorating others who's around him. There's nothing worse than a student who is sleeping head on the desk, doesn't like the project you're doing, and is bothering the other students because the student doesn't know what to do himself. We need to take each of these areas one at a time. Start the school year off with zest, have a discussion about it, talk about it, and then 2 weeks later have Mario do a self-assessment that how did he feel on the scale, and let me show you the scale. It's on the second page. Number 1 is very much unlike the student, 2 is unlike the student, 3 is somewhat like the student, or very much like the student. So actually 5 is the high number, 1 is the low number. So Mario would self-assess himself, and his one particular classroom teacher would also assess. If you're using an Excel spreadsheet, you could have these numbers add up and give you an average of how he's doing. You could also have later on students self-assess each other on particular areas. So here we have zest. Then the next 2 weeks, talk about grit. And so that at the end of the second 2 weeks, you'll be evaluating zest and grit. What's grit? Finishes whatever he or she begins, tries very hard even after experiencing failure, works independently with a focus. Again, teacher evaluating, student evaluating, it's not so difficult to do. You know, if once you get the system going, it's not a difficult and it's not that time consuming. It does work. Self-control, comes to class prepared. Just like we want him to go to work prepared, pays attention and resists distractions. He's not fooling around, remembers and follows directions, gets to work right away rather than procrastinating. I am sure that if you showed your employers that the first thing you're going to do to make your students an asset for their company is that they are going to be assessed throughout a period of time on these behaviors. Now, you may not have 4 years to do it in, right? You may only have 2 years or 1 year. The goal is to do it more than once, more than maybe 1/2 semester, right? The student needs to demonstrate these activities, this behavior, needs to understand them, and needs to be consistent with them. And so that we're really training them to be really good workers. So this is the first item I would have in Mario's passport, would be his final evaluation. Maybe it's his senior year of the indicators of how he's doing with all of these topics. This is something an employer would want to see. The second item that would go in the passport, we need to teach our students how to verbalize and journalize their experiences, both in the classroom and at the workplace. With the GPS career plan, you saw how they were journalizing and writing about what they learned in the classroom, and that they actually put in sentences of, with a team of 4 people, prepared a PowerPoint to do such and such. Well, we need for our students to be able to communicate to employers, because what employers will tell us is that we'll ask them a question of, why do you want to work here? And they have no idea. Or they'll give the answer is, I know you pay well, right? What was your biggest challenge at your last job? Oh, getting to work every day. Those aren't the right answers. So what we need to do is an activity that works very well in an English class or any other class, is that there are many very basic questions that our students should be prepared to talk about. To get them to talk about these skills, we need for them to write about them first and then to role play them. So, I like my job because, I believe that I'm confident. My favorite person at work is because. Now there's a lot of questions, or a lot of questions they could answer. I have 2 pages here. We actually do this particular assignment in our work-based learning certification classes. Now, it's not exactly how you're looking at it because I want to show you a system. What I want my student to do is, when he or she is speaking to me or the employer, is that in a way they need to repeat the topic when they're answering the statement, state why they feel this way, and state how will this student continue to maintain this feeling, or how the student will go about changing the situation. So, for example, if the question was, did you like your last employment? It's very important our students say, I like my hostess job at Friendly's because I enjoy dealing with people. The feeling is, making people happy gives me great joy. Maintenance or change, I know that if I am courteous to my customers, my manager will be happy and I may be rewarded with good tips. So all of these questions that I have shown you on the pages before, your students need to go through and answer all of them in this format. When they do that, they will be ready for that job interview. Many of my students would say, wow, that interview was a snap because I knew exactly how to respond. So I strongly recommend that we put something like this into Mario's passport, where he is practicing how to talk about his experiences, whether they're on the job or in the classroom. They could have been, what did you learn in your technology class? And the student could talk about that. A good part of the employability skills profile has to do with the work-based learning training. And I wanted to share with you a typical work-based learning training plan that is used in the state-approved programs. And this is a plan that you could adopt also. It's a little bit lengthy, but I think it really covers everything that we would want the student to know about the job himself as well as the employer to know how he did. So the first page of the plan starts off with the career. Wherever that student is going, what job title they're going for. I'm very big on using the Holland Code interest of looking it up. That goes part of the career plan that I showed you last time. And I even like to put in the career cluster. What industry is this student practicing or working in? And certainly the information about the student, the school, the supervisor, the training schedule. There are questions on this training plan as far as insurance coverage. Is the student employee covered by workers' comp? Is the student a non-paid intern covered by workers' comp? Is the student a non-paid observer covered by the school's insurance? What's the transportation? How will the student get to the job site? What are the goals for this work-based learning student? To explore and master skills, to develop 21st century skills, to be trained in the safe operations, to be able to demonstrate positive behavior. Okay? So now, still the same training plan going on, the job task. If this student is going to be a stock clerk, what are the specific tasks this student is going to be asked to be doing at the job site, and an area to comment on, did the student master the skill, needs more training at the work site, needs more training at school, has not reached this training area. Now what's interesting is that usually a work-based learning coordinator would sit down with the employer to talk about what are the job tasks. And this is a job of the work-based learning coordinator to create this training plan. So the coordinator would be putting in these different types of activities. There's a wonderful site, ONET, there's a URL that to help you do this, you can just go to ONET, look up stock clerk, and see the list of job tasks, and that you could even start from this point. In fact, employers tell me that their job descriptions are usually created from ONET. They start there, and then they update what they want and delete what's not part of the job, and they use this for their job description. So it's a really great advantage for your student to know specifically why are you going to that job every day, what's expected of you, what are you supposed to be doing. At the same time, in addition to doing specific tasks, the student needs to be validating the 21st century workplace skills. And these are the same items that were on the employability skills profile, right? Student works cooperatively as a team member. Student is able to read instructions, follow directions, calculate and measure, responsible manner, demonstrates critical thinking. All right, so on this job, this training plan for the work site, it is there for the employer to discuss this with the student. The student should also be evaluating safety training. Are they, have they been given basic safety precautions related to stairs, floors, office equipment, and furniture? Do they wear the right dress and the headgear and so forth? Have they been given training to use any tools if that's permissible? Do they know what to do in case of a fire? Is there safety precautions related to sexual harassment and workplace violence? Have they been given that training? This is very important. There's probably a lot of teachers out there who have never thought about, gee, do I have to do a lesson on sexual harassment and workplace violence when that student goes out for those 54 hours? Yes, you do. All right? All these topics, again, are covered in the work-based learning certification courses. And then, look, behavior. All right? Did they wear the appropriate clothing? Were they clean? Use the right language? Punctual? Positive body language? Those indicators that we talked about before. And then, of course, the training plan is signed by the employer, the coordinator. The parent should see it and sign it, and the student should see it and sign it. And so that goes into Mario's passport. Also, to make Mario grow, learn more about the industry and the career that he decided to enter, there's a topic that appears in the New York State Work-Based Learning Manual that talks about all aspects of industry. Mario needs to learn more about his company, so he should learn how to create an organizational chart. He should have a job description that he has for his job that he just went through. He should have a career ladder, an activity that shows that if he starts at a stock course. I'm sorry, folks.
I'm a guidance counselor at East Side High School, and I am looking to register for the spring course with Work-Based Learning Extension.
I'm sorry, folks. Thought I had that off, but I don't. No. Okay. Activities on products, systems, marketing, competition, history of company, floor plan, professional associations. All these are things that can be done in other classes to make Mario a better employee and understand where he's going. So, I'm sorry, what the interruption on the phone. Okay. I think that one's finished. Connecting to employers. Here's another page for Mario's passport. Mario needs to know when he leaves your school building who is going to hire him. Who are the employers that you have been talking to? He needs a list of where to go. Right? We never give this to students, and we should. He needs, it's like an invitation or a welcome card of go down to this company and tell them that you're a part of this program. Show them your workforce readiness credentials. Show them your passport that you have to workforce ready. To help Mario and yourself, there are some really great resources out there that I really strongly recommend that you pick up and read. The job mark and job hunting has changed dramatically. Take a look at What Color is Your Parachute 2015 edition. It's all about how to get a job in the new world of social media and what employers are expecting. Right? There's also an edition of that book, What Color is Your Parachute for Teens. Right? Either of these books would be good reading material for your students in classes as well as for yourself to understand the competitive global workplace that you are working in at this time. Here's a list of an idea of a list of potential corporations. You know, I would even give names of people of who to contact in these corporations so that they know, so that when they're sitting at home and their parents are saying, how come you don't have a job, Mario should be able to take out his passport and say, well, here's my list and I should start working on these and go down and talk to these people. Now, Mario, of course, should have a resume. We talked about the resume in last presentation, the CDOS resume, including that in the passport, as well as I have another one for Earl the plumber. Here's the same document that we saw before where we would record the hours from CTE courses, work-based learning experiences, the same type of total, however you want to do it. What's more important is what I have on the left-hand side is I talked about before in the beginning of coming up with a certificate of being workforce ready. Today, the topic of badges is really very exciting and very sought after, both by adults as well as teens. People put on their Facebook pages and other places, on their resumes, badges of completion of skills. Maybe you want to create a badge for your students that they would be able to put on their resume so that it indicates that they are workforce ready. Sometimes a badge is easier to have show up rather than a separate certificate. Just a thought. So this is Mario's portfolio. Here's actually the Word document. I took you through slides, so this is the Word document that I'm going to be sending you. All right, so here's a synopsis of the traits and behavior employers want, and Mario's going to be writing down examples, demonstrating those behaviors. Here are the pages for the job interview questions where they would fill out the form for each of those questions. So where the state sent us a 3-page report, I can't tell you, 22 pages I have here. Now you don't have to use all these pages. The beauty of Word document is that you can delete what you want and add what you think you should have in there. Here is for 21st century skills, a self-analysis with examples that the student would write that they can do these things. They're validating it. Here's the training plan that I talked about before. And by the way, in the work-based learning courses, we create many of these training plans so that we can exchange with each other. Someone does stock clerk, someone does office person, so that you can have a whole group of training plans for yourself. So, and then there is the industry knowledge you put in there, but then there's also sections that you may want to put in, like how to call for an interview. I assume that maybe you went over this in a class. So exactly how do you do that? What is the script that you would actually say when you make a call? So here's actually calling for the interview script. They're going to need this while they're sitting at home trying to call an employer. So you want them to bring that back up. Dressing for success. You went over it in class, but it should be in their passport. Be ready to complete a job application. Know what materials you have to have with you to answer those questions. Try a job application online. That's really a great experience for them. Cover letters to go with the resume. Have your students create a cover letter for future reference so that in case they need to put a cover letter with a resume to somebody, they have that. So an example. There's Eric the plumber, another example of a resume. Oh, I also have CDOS Chris. These were actually created by my work-based learning students. How about a thank you letter after the job interview? That should be in the passport for Mario. Here's the list of potential employers. And that's the validation of the hours that's in there. So this is only an example of what you can do that could really make this a project, an item that your student will want to leave with. The beauty of our computers today is that we can constantly add to a Word doc. It can be saved. You can have a file saved. The student can save the file if they need to connect with you to get their portfolio. You'll have it for them in the future, but it's there for them to retrieve. And here's the questions we started in the beginning. We're just about finished. Is there a need for the employability skills profile? Definitely. You need it for CDOS. That's a definite. You need it for a state-approved CTE program. But more important, you need it to prove that Mario is workforce ready. Who needs it? Every student that graduates or leaves our high school should have a passport. Who wants it? We need to make the employers want it. They need to ask for it. If they're not asking for it, then it doesn't have value. You have to be the person to work with the employer to get them to ask for it. Don't wait to say the Department of Labor is going to tell everybody to do this. You get your employers together and you do it. Who completes it? A team. When is it completed? Over a period of time. Oops, sorry. Is it graded? I don't think so, but it certainly is reviewed. You could grade it if you want. What format does it come in? I like the digital Word, but there's many other ways to do this. You can do it as a PowerPoint. You can do it as a free Google website. Does the student take the documents upon exiting? I sure hope so. That's the whole reason to do all of this. Otherwise, there's no reason. So here we are. We have unpacked the GPS career plan and the employability skills passport. I hope that you have a better vision. You have some ideas that you can take back to your department. Start one step at a time. Don't have to do everything at one time. I want to make sure I mention too that if you want to know more about work experience, our professional association, the New York State Work Experience Coordinators Association, is a group of about 160 of us around the state. Each year we have an annual conference, and it's coming up in March. It's actually March 19th and 20th in Albany, and we will be discussing these topics that we just discussed here today. So it's a great opportunity for you to get to know more about this topic as well as meet people in the field that are already doing it. And of course, many of you know I do teach the work-based learning certification courses from both Buffalo State and Hofstra University. So, Gretchen, I think I'm finished.
Okay, we have a few questions for you.
Okay.
The first question says, do we have access to this template for indicators ready to work?
Yes. And anything I talked about today is going to be sent to you. We have the email addresses, and I'm going to be sending you the PowerPoint, the passport, and definitely the indicators.
Okay, great. The next question is, did you say the 54 hours for the CDOS credential is to come from specific work experience working in a business? Could that also include school-related projects such as community service, service learning, senior projects, and school-based enterprise?
You know what? I can't be the person to make that final statement, all right? Because I don't represent state ed and I don't represent your special education department. All I can say is that do your best you can to get that experience in a business for a student, right? There's a great group of people out there, the special ed transition teams, Matt Juergens on Long Island, Kathy Polides, and Lisa Dearlove up in Buffalo. Those are the people that could really answer specifically where that work experience has to come from. I'm not the last person to make that decision, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. So, go ahead.
Okay. And your next question is, why does the school have to provide a student with a list of
employers?
Jobs? Sure. Isn't part of job and career readiness having the initiative to pursue and identify job opportunities?
Yes, it's both. It certainly is. That's where that, when I was referring to what colors your parachute, that you need to teach your students how to find jobs. And it's a whole new system today out in the world of work. And so you need to share with them the new way of finding a job, the tools that you definitely need. Having a LinkedIn account has become almost a main essential for 21 and over. Right? I know we're working with younger kids, but they need to know this. Of how are they going to find jobs in major corporations? How are they going to find jobs if they move out of their own particular hometown to find work? But at the same time, when they leave us, they're still very young and still need some help. And so by sharing your advisory board list with your students of these are the companies that know about what we're doing is going to help them open a door. So I think we need to help them as well as train them.
Okay. And the next question is, how can we get the info on ONET? Is there an ONET website?
Yes, there is an ONET website, and you will see the URL. It was in the training plan. And it's not a .gov site. It always confuses most of us. It's onetonline.org. It does come from the government, but I believe it comes from the government. Everybody uses it. It's great.
Okay, great. Your next question is, any words of wisdom for making a career readiness certificate and an advisory board work with a broad variety of programs and employers, including career paths that require post-secondary education?
Wow. I'm not too sure if that was the answer to the question as well as a question. The career readiness certificate, I would say if you create an advisory board, that should probably be the first topic you want to look at and ask those employers and those colleges what are you looking for, and let us create the activities to lead up to that.
Okay. And the next question is, if a student goes to both for half a day, do those hours count towards CTE?
If the student goes where?
BOCES?
Oh, BOCES, yes. Oh, yes, definitely. Mm-hmm.
And the last question is, my school has not had a work-based learning program for 5 years. We are looking to bring it back. Does there need to be a specific work-based learning class, or can there just be a work-based learning coordinator?
Okay. If this individual is focusing on only working on the CDOS credential, the individual who is going to be involved with work-based learning does not have to be a certified individual. However, the state has said in the papers that came out about the commencement credential is that they highly recommend some individual take the 2 classes because there's a tremendous amount of knowledge you need to work with businesses, and probably the most important areas would be in the safety area and what students can do and can't do, the child labor laws, the hazardous occupations, the hours to work, creating an advisory board. There are so many different components to work-based learning that by taking the 2 courses, it would certainly make your job a lot easier. If this individual is going to actually want to operate, coordinate a state-approved program that fits into the CTE career pathway that's coming out, then that person needs to be certified and will need to take the 2 courses. So, and the courses, I said, I'm connected with Buffalo State and Hofstra, but I believe they're also offered from Oswego and CUNY down in New York City.
Okay, and your next question is, can we use this with freshmen, or is this just for juniors and seniors? We know that freshmen cannot leave, but what about getting them ready for the workforce?
Can they use the passport?
They don't specify.
Okay. The sooner you can start the passport, I guess, the better. But you want to make sure that you have those students continually over the years so that they don't forget it. It would be kind of hard if they were in one year, then out, and then in again. But I would start it as soon as possible. Decide what pages you want, save it digitally, bring it back up when they're again with you in the future.
The next question, and there's an acronym here I don't understand, so I'm just going to read you the letters.
Okay.
The school wants to create a WECEP for next year. How long do you run the program before it has to be registered by New York State?
So I think you said WECEP, W-E-C-E-P?
Yes.
Okay, WECEP is a work experience career exploration program for 14 and 15-year-olds. And it's a paid program. So the question, and you need to be certified to offer WECEP. You need those 2 courses. And so the question is, how long can you run it before you register it? Well, you better be certified and register it before you run it. I'm sure Cheryl would want that answer, Cheryl Winstell.
Okay, so if we want to just give everyone one more minute to see if there's any more questions.
Okay.
Okay, and we do have one more question. What does the principal need to do for this year prior to June 2015 to demonstrate the student's employability for the CDOS credential?
I believe the principal has wide guidance for what he needs to do to make this decision for 2015. There's nothing stated specifically that what needs to be done. However, I would suggest the principal sit down with the teachers and the work-based learning person and set some benchmarks. I would do that right away before the second semester begins, and make sure then that those benchmarks, whatever they feel at this moment, those students will need to complete. Otherwise, next year it goes into the 216 hours and so forth, the CTE courses, and all the other things.
Okay, and, well, we have one more. Where did you get the template for the resumes? Can we use it to start their resumes instead of typing from scratch?
Oh, definitely. trying to remember if I gave the template out with the GPS career plan. Certainly, I'd be happy to share that with you. I have what I call a resume, 21st century resume playbook with the templates and all different examples. I guess what I would like to suggest is, yes, I'm going to be sending everybody the materials that I mentioned before, but if there are more specific questions and requests, please just email me to sgoobing@gmail.com. So it's S for Susan, sgoobing, G-U-B-I-N-G @gmail.com.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sue. You don't have any more questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope that I've answered some questions, and good luck with your passports. Tell me what's happening. Give me some feedback.
Thank you, Sue. On behalf of the Technical Assistance Center, we'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar. And as a reminder, this webinar is recorded and will be available for viewing at nyctecenter.org under Instructional Resources. And all of the materials used during the webinar will be posted with the recording as well.